So now we're going to dial it back a bit. We're going to dial it back a whole lot, actually. This is an activity that with Karen Lucci, who is a high school teacher at Hopewell Valley Central High School in New Jersey, it came together at a BioQuest workshop. So that's part of the reason why I'm presenting this. You're going to be sharing some teacher-created materials too soon enough, but also kind of the moral of the story is that at a summer workshop, I met Karen for the first time, and we decided to work together using some of the tools that we had learned about in the workshop to come up with something that fit her needs as a teacher, and it was really fun. And she's now used this activity twice in her classroom, and to great success. And together we've written it up to be to be submitted to the American biology teacher. So actually I have copies of the manuscript that we wrote. Since it hasn't been accepted or published yet, it's for your eyes only, but that way you can see kind of the whole idea. What we developed here together was she needed something. She teaches 9th grade biology, and she wanted something that she could do on the first day with her incoming students. So that's what I meant when I said we're dialing it back. So this activity she does for 3 60-minute class periods, the first, second, and third days that she has them. So it's a very introductory activity. It introduces things that she wants to hit on again and again, like throughout the year. So it's very, it fulfills a whole bunch of different needs that I'll talk about. So the title of this activity, well, how I'm presenting it today is Birds of a Feather, Data and Argumentation, because that's kind of the goals that we're getting into here. And Karen was actually supposed to come, so, but had some family commitments, but anyway, she's sorry that she couldn't be here. I think some of you might know her. Is that true? Yeah, okay, awesome. I think she helped recruit some folks to come. She did. Yeah, she's awesome. Okay, so when we first got together, these are the ideas that Karen was looking into, that she wanted to, at the very beginning of her school year, start introducing some of the nature of science and getting that discussion going about what is science, okay? And how science isn't necessarily, sitting at a lab bench, that kind of a thing. She wanted to have people analyze and interpret some real data. And one of the tools that we had learned about at this workshop was about eBird, which I'll get into a little bit more later. It's a citizen science database. And also she wanted to have them start practicing using data as evidence to support a claim or an argument of some kind. And she also wanted to introduce students to Excel, maybe for the first time, or for some of them to review it, because she was going to hit on that throughout her semester and throughout her whole year. And another thing was that she had identified that her students, and maybe you've seen this as well, have some issues with identifying what's a reliable source when it comes to the internet. Yahoo Answers probably comes up more than you would like. So she wanted to also practice from the beginning talking about how to evaluate, because now, when I was in school, you could never use anything off the internet, but now there's some really great sources of information on the internet, and people do cite it for different things. So. Now, another thing that came out of this was, and this was a surprise goal. When she implemented it, we didn't really expect this to happen, but by doing this in the first day, this activity really set kind of the tone for the whole year for her students. It kind of introduced this idea of discourse, and she had her students throughout the year saying, I want to see data, which was a total shock to her. She'd never had that before. So it introduced inquiry, evidence, data-driven discourse into her classroom and made it sort of an underlying theme. So some of the methods, some of the other things we took out of the BioQuest workshop that we liked were these ideas of using cases, like the one we used yesterday. So we designed it using a case, which Karen wrote. Also, we wanted to customize it for her because her students are from New Jersey. And so we wanted to use the local ecology as sort of the hook. And one of the things I like about this activity is that it's easy to customize it for where you are, and we'll talk about that a little bit. The way we have it written is for New Jersey in the paper, but I customized it for Tennessee for us today. Also, it's computer-based, so it doesn't really, you need the computer resources. She needs to request the laptop card in advance. But it doesn't require a lot of lab-type materials and that sort of thing. But also introduces this idea that you can do really great science without a Bunsen burner or a PCR machine. So this is sort of the theme of NIMBioS. So downstairs, if we all walked around there a little bit, there's some really world-class research going on downstairs. But you won't see a PCR machine, you won't see a wet lab, anything like that. You'll see people, computers, dry erase boards, equations written on boards and things like that, comfy chairs. There's so much data in the world now that you can spend your entire career as a scientist finding really exciting things out without ever stepping into a wet lab. And we need people who are excited and can do these kinds of things. Also theoretical work too, like designing your little computer-based model and coming up with, having a virtual lab is very useful. All right, so here's our case. Do I need to blow that up a little bit? Because we're gonna read it. Can you all in the back see it okay?
Blow it up a little bit.
Sure. Go away, whatever that one is. Okay. So the title is Birds of a Feather Flock Together. So I think I need a Stacy. Someone volunteer to be Stacy?
And Stacy's really cool, so jump right
Yeah.
in. This was the year of Stacy cases. Everybody wanted to be Stacy.
Yeah, that's great. Okay. Tony will be Stacy. Taking one for the team there. How about a narrator?
I'll narrate.
Thank you. Let's see. I think we need a grandfather.
I'll be a grandfather.
Awesome. And I think we need a grandmother, too. Okay. Cool. I think that has everybody. All right. So Stacy starts us off.
Bye. Stacy waved to her parents as she watched the car disappear in the distance. Once more, Stacy and her younger brother Dylan were staying with their grandparents in Greenback, Tennessee, while their parents were traveling for work. It was a warm evening in the middle of April. The next day, Stacy woke up earlier than usual, sat up in bed, and looked out the window.
What is all that noise?
She groaned and fell back on her pillow.
It's those freaking birds again. Will they ever go away?
When she realized she wasn't going to fall back asleep, Stacy got up, put on some clothes, and trudged downstairs. When she entered the kitchen, Stacy looked out the window and could see a red bird with an orange beak and bird feet. She could also see other types of birds hopping around the yard. Dylan sat at the table eating a bowl of cereal.
Good morning, Stacy. Would you like some breakfast?
Her grandmother was standing by the stove.
Oh, I don't know. Those birds woke me up. I don't see why they have to make all that noise.
Her grandfather seemed oblivious to the fact that Stacy was annoyed by the bird behavior. He just nodded his head and said,
Yes, it seemed like every year we hear the wood thrush earlier and earlier in the month. I am sure that when your mother was a child, we never heard or saw them until May.
I didn't see you.
Is it me? Okay. Oh dear, I don't know about that. I'm sure we've always had them around. In fact, I never know when I should put the hummingbird feeder out. Maybe it should stay out all year. Now, what can I fix you for breakfast, Stacy? I promised your mother that we would make sure you would get some decent food.
Stacy thought for a moment.
And I guess I'll have some scrambled eggs.
You can thank Karen for that one. I'll let her know you all appreciated that. Okay, so now in our typical case analysis format, so what is the story about?
Birds.
Yeah?
Disgruntled teenagers.
Yeah, I'm saying annoying children.
There's patient grandparents.
Okay.
Climate change.
Okay. That's,
Trying to see if you're making it for-
No, but that's part of it.
I heard someone say maybe a cardinal. Okay, so
Migration pattern.
showing earlier.
Suburban living, they have a backyard.
Migration pattern, I heard.
We're just waiting.
Yeah, this is what winging it. The bad pun monster is now released.
Bird calling behavior.
Bird calling. All right.
Niches.
The wood thrush.
Hummingbird.
Hummingbird.
Excellent.
Maybe more seasonal change.
Okay. Changes. Okay. Well, I think we have a good list here to start out, I'm thinking. So now it's time for, y'all remember what comes next? What do you know? And what do you need to know? Okay, so first, you get a couple minutes to write down some things. And feel free to use these as your ideas for entry points. And do talk to a neighbor while you're doing this. The think, pair, share. We'll merge the think and the pair.
Okay. So, selection. For let's see. Yeah, well, every year we hear the wood crusher.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
No, I mean in terms of reminder. I was thinking
Exactly.
I don't
What do we need to know? I don't know anything about wood thrushes specifically. So wood thrush, habitat and behaviors.
I don't know enough about hierarchies and birds.
Hmm.
Territory.
So hierarchies, pattern, bird behaviors, and sort of dominance behaviors.
Right.
All right, let's do the share part of the think, pair, share. Let's go around to some of our groups and have you share just one thing from what do you know? I'm excited to hear lots of people know great stuff about birds. Yes, Jean.
Different bird species have different vocalizations or needing.
Okay. Different vocalizations. All right. Someone else?
Migrations typically based on climate or temperature changes.
Okay. Okay.
And going along with that, there's a fair amount of evidence that for many species, they are migrating earlier. So you are seeing activity starting earlier in the season and continuing later.
Okay. So there's evidence. You've seen evidence of this. Okay.
You connect global warming to
Oh, so that's a what do we need to know question? Okay. Yeah. So connect global learning.
You know that birdsong, there's some evidence that birdsong pitch has been changing in certain environments where there's a lot of traffic, things like that. They've been going up in urban environments.
Okay. Let's see. Anyone in the back, or don't want people to get all the cherries before other people do. The easy picking.
Songs to either attract bait or announce this is my territory, sort of thing. Different purposes.
Okay.
Songs for different purposes.
Different. Okay. That's interesting.
Need to know, it'd be nice to know migration years ago, migration time now.
Okay.
That is available.
All right. I'm writing down some of your questions. Migrations changing. Any other things you know?
A lot of birds that have a very wide range in North America when they migrate to South America, a lot of their habitat is a much narrower area, and a lot of them are in forests and rainforests and things, so they have less area to overwinter.
Okay.
Increasing competition.
Okay.
Here too, we are destroying habitat as well.
I think it's even more significant out there. They have a wider
There's some habitat
like there.
threat to habitat. Where is that at?
I was going to say, we could say that habitat's changing here as well as.
As there, both places. Yeah. Okay.
The males of each species have unique coloration for attracting mates.
Okay. So normally I would be writing down all of your ideas, but I've got this on fast forward a little bit. I would be making a nice list of what do you know, as well as what do you know. Just letting you know. Yeah.
If you're looking at the fact that the habitat could change for worse, it could be changing for better too, because when grandparents lost their home and they've been treated around to get rid of future areas that were built.
Okay.
Over time, they have increased the habitat for them.
Okay.
Well, and they may put birds seed out year round. Migrate if they have space.
Okay.
Do
So
grandparents have a
we've got yeah. So we've got a couple good questions here, I think. One is about have habitats been getting better? Or is that, yeah. Has habitat increased, basically? Or decreased? And your question goes at like whether human feeding has affected bird migration and that sort of thing. Okay. Question, good. Any other, like, what do you need to know questions to add? Any other ideas? Yeah.
Drew raised the question about hierarchies at the bird feeder. You know, which species get to go first, and basically linking this to how are those dominances established.
Okay. We have some good questions here. So, usually I'll have a list of what do you know and what you need to know. Some of the what do you know we'll start to answer. Some of the what do you need to know potentially, or might. Karen told me that something she does now, because it's the beginning of the year, and one thing that her students start learning from the beginning is how to identify a scientific question versus a non-scientific one. So I tried as best as I could to write down sort of your questions as you said them. Could have done a better job of that. But which of these questions do you think are scientific questions? Questions that can be answered with science? So, second one? Okay. Why do you say the second one? So that one is there data or evidence to show migrations changing now versus then? Measurable, observable, okay.
The third one, certainly.
Has habitat increased or decreased? Okay. They all could? Yeah. So I think that this kind of shows our audience here that all of these are scientific. Some of the students will come up with some more silly questions to begin with, or ones that might be based on opinion. And then you can kind of lead into a discussion of this. But you're all well-trained scientists, so you go right for the meaty scientific questions, right? So anyway, so you can go back into this quite a bit. One of the things we learned about from the BioQuest was when you design a case, something you can do is you can sort of preload it a little bit by putting some of the questions that you want the students to start asking within the case. So I noticed that some of you wondered the same thing that the grandpa did, basically. Like, this is the one. So that one came out. The other question that we sort of preloaded into this is the grandmother's question about the hummingbird feeder. So you can have the students kind of say, what are the characters wondering about in this story? And have them pull out that question as well. So if you want to be a little bit more prepared for where the discussion is going, that's the way we've sort of designed this case, is that we're going to take it sort of a way that we expect. But there are so many great questions here, and if you wanted to make it more open-ended, you can definitely go a lot of different ways. Okay. So these are the two questions that we'll investigate a little bit. We're going to be using these two websites, All About Birds and the eBird website. How many of you have been to All About Birds before? Yeah. If you're trying to figure out something in your yard, that's a great site to go to. How about eBird? We have one here. Are you a birder by chance? No? Okay. I like bird watching, so I've actually submitted many checklists to this site. It's one that I like, and part of the reason why I picked it. So this is where we break out the computers, right? So they're already there. Wonderful. All right. So for the sake of time, we're just going to go straight to eBird. And I'll tell you that All About Birds is a great sort of online field guide where you can find things like range maps, photos of birds, things about their behavior, and songs, lots of great stuff. You can find out what's native to your area. But go straight to eBird. And to the site. And then these are the questions that we came up with to get students thinking about how to evaluate a source. So, so I'd like you, there's only one person who's familiar with the site, so the rest of you have to do a little bit more work. I want you to find out what is the purpose of this site. I want you to develop an opinion about whether you are able to trust the information that's found on the site, but I want you to justify your opinion. Okay? And also, can we trust this data? You'll learn that it's about citizen science. Can we trust this data, what we have here? Now, the way to find out about the site, a lot of websites have this, is an About tab. So go ahead and click on that and read a little bit about eBird. done reading, I'd like you to just talk to your neighbor about these questions.
It depends. It depends how well they tag it. So if they tag it, then you can at least lose it.
Right.
To some degree. Otherwise, I don't think it's even that.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. I mean, it would be cool to see it, how many reports are there from a given area? Because how many people are there doing this?
Right.
But yeah, and then you want to access the volume.
But no, I never thought of it that way. That's even more of what I was saying. That's interesting because it's all. If you have a square, if you have two square miles, and in 1 square mile you've got 2 guys doing the whole thing, and another square mile you got 50.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get back together.
Yeah.
So what's the purpose of this thing? Someone said data collection? Okay. I'm sure you all know how to write a lot faster than I do.
My reliable sources, ornithologists or bird people who are just good, but who are bird watchers.
Okay. So this goes to trustworthy, maybe. Or, well, maybe not. Okay, bird distribution. The people that are doing it are ornithologists. What was the other one?
Or just bird enthusiasts.
Bird enthusiasts. Okay. Hobbyists.
There's
Okay.
a time frame on here when you're likely to see the birds. I just clicked on the graph and you can
Okay.
see which time of year you're likely to
Okay.
see them.
So there's tools, for example, for finding when you can see a bird.
And the names of the people who reported the sightings are listed as well.
Who reported it? Yeah, the About tab is only the beginning, of course. You would want to check out all the different things on the site to see what the purpose is. Anything else for purpose? Yeah.
Related articles, other articles that you can look in.
Okay. So links to articles. Okay. All right. There's one keyword that hasn't popped up yet. Citizen science was in there, right? What does citizen science mean to you? Just from the words. Or if you know what it is. What do you know about citizen science?
Crowdsourcing, basically.
Okay.
Rather than just having one person or a highly centralized process, you're just dispersing it and letting large numbers of individuals do little bits and pieces.
Okay.
Large sample population.
Exactly.
Okay.
With potential variation in quality.
A large number contribute. How many of you have heard of citizen science before? A few of you? Okay. Any of you participated in it in your classroom? Yeah? Oh, okay. Awesome. So citizens.
So the key part is it provides an opportunity for the public to become invested
Yeah.
in their own community.
So public investment. The citizen becomes a scientist. Yeah. Okay. So how about the second one about trusting information on the site? Would you personally trust? Let's do by a show of hands. Would you trust? Anyone not trust? Can someone talk about why they came to that conclusion, besides the fact that I showed you the site? Yeah.
I clicked on my own county, which is admittedly a small county, but I've been out with the local bird club, and it's led by a biology professor at Washington College who's really knowledgeable. And I've seen him with his little notebook and journal, recording what species he sees every time he goes out. So his name popped up on several of the sightings I saw. So I would trust his judgment, although I know even the real experts make mistakes when they're looking at something that's relatively uncommon. They'll disagree. Oh, it's a such and such. No, it's a so and such.
Okay.
What about the average citizen that enters in what they saw out on the hike? Because it doesn't give you any, you have to know the bird.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they'll say you can just hear it, not just see it. So you need to know your calls and say, oh, I heard a.
Calls are
Yeah.
more reliable. It's more reliable because you have a lot of different people putting in. So,
Okay.
the more people put in, the more reliable it is.
Sort of like safety in numbers or something.
Up to a point.
You did?
What about average Joe?
So you're in there. Thank us.
So yeah, checks go here.
Okay. Can
Oh, it is data.
you talk about that? Here, we have a good point here. I think this addresses your question about,
We mentioned
can the
two
average
checks that
Joe?
we built in. One, there was a regional person who looked over all data.
Okay.
And within the system, it was flagged that the data seemed out of norm.
Okay. So there are some
But what
checks.
if you made up data that does fall within the norm?
Well, there's a chance that.
There would be a small risk of bias toward the expectations. But yeah, they're doing their best to.
We couldn't figure out any motivation. Why would you do it? What do you get from that?
Don't be surprised if you're a really motivated climate change denier, you might.
So this is great because it turns out this is pretty controversial about whether we can use the citizen science data for conclusions. So I think this is a really good discussion to talk about. And you all think about, how the data is collected is really important in how much weight you give to something, right? So, yeah.
I would just point out, there's one person here I clearly don't trust. This looks like it was done by Gene, because the June eBirder of the month was Ken Burdick. And that's
sounds
just too
made
perfect.
Up. That sounds made up.
Some of the sightings in my county were done by a woman named Sandra Bird. Well,
The data just doesn't fly.
about 10 years ago, somebody claimed they heard an ivory-billed woodpecker in
Yes.
Louisiana, and
Yes,
thousands
famous.
of people descended on the swamp looking for it, trying to verify that. So I think if somebody puts in something outrageous, it's going to bells and whistles.
Yeah.
It turns out that, so part of the reason why I trust this site is because it's put out by the Cornell School of Ornithology, which is pretty famous for a pretty well-known source. And they actually came out and at first validated that person's sighting because they had some short video about it. It's a really interesting story if you ever want to look into the ghost bird or the story of the ivory-billed woodpecker. Now they've backed off of that a little bit because pileatids and ivory-billed woodpeckers, their field marks are pretty similar, and the video was grainy. Yeah, it's interesting stuff. So yeah, it's a good discussion. So let's get in groups, and maybe just with your neighbor. Now that we've explored eBird, and also you can look into all about birds too, I want you to come up with an answer for Grandma. So Grandma's question was, when do I put out my hummingbird feeder? Do some of you put out hummingbird feeders? Yeah? So have you ever wondered about when you should put that out? Yeah, 'cause some people keep it out all year, which is very heroic and awesome, but my mom always waits. You can use these sites to find that answer. So go ahead and click around on eBird and see. So remember, Grandma lives in Tennessee, so that makes a difference about what kind of greenback.
Close to national, close to here.
Oh, it's close to here. Yeah, it's close to here.
Should have made them go to Google.
It's maybe about 45 minutes from here. And be prepared to justify your answer with evidence.